Welcome to the Lara Jane Layton Show. This podcast is for you, the person who keeps putting others first. Your self-talk has held you back. You no longer need to take a second seat. Let's explore ways to overcome self-doubt. You can silence that inner bully voice and achieve your full potential. Here's your host, Lara Jane.
Hello, listener. It's Lara Jane, and I have a new friend with me, and his name is John. John is an author and has a book that he's going to tell you about. But what intrigued me about the topics was letting go of control. Now, I am a control freak, so John, you're going to have a hard time convincing me how to let go. So please tell me a little bit more of how I can not have to be in control all the time.
Well, control for me was a tough thing because I took control of my life at age 12 and basically did whatever John wanted to do. And from that time on until I was, 2016. So we're going back probably till I was in my late 40s is how long I controlled every aspect of my life. And I did whatever I wanted to do. And I didn't really, I probably stepped on a few people when I was doing that, which is not correct. But it wasn't until I was working with my counselor here in Tacoma, Washington, and my spiritual mentor that I really learned how to just surrender my control to God and just let him take over in my life. And that happened in November of 2016 because I was going through a really traumatic time in my life. And I just, in my morning prayer time, I was like, you know what, I'm done. I can't do this anymore. I'm going to give it all to you. And then the things that took place after that were just amazing. And it's continued from 2016 until now. So,
it sounds about the same time where I started switching my life from I hate religion to it's okay to let that spirituality come back in my life.
Right.
So we're spiritually the same age.
Well, yeah. And I would say that, I don't like the term religion. I like the term relationship because I think religion clouds the relationship we can have with Christ. So that's something that I've learned with my mentorship. And so I just kind of, for me, it's more of a personal relationship and than any kind of religion.
So you spun around. So you're probably 22 or something like that. So you spun around for 10 years or so in this controlling your own life and not letting others in. What did that feel like?
Well, it caused it was a lot of confusion, pain. When I look back on it now, that's what I can see. Of course, you don't know it is when you're going through that because your pride and your ego take over. And I was a Marine. And so, there's pride, there's ego in that. Then I was a football coach. And so, head football coach. So got to have a little ego there. You got to believe with what you're doing is the best thing that, there's no one else that can do it better than you. And so all that just fueled that fire, but it also caused hard times because, I had some self-destructive behavior and, I've said it before. There's a lot of people that I stepped on and hurt during that time. And it was because of the control and the power. And when I started walking with Christ and starting to deepen my faith, it was, people would say, John, it's in God's timing. And I'm like, no, I want it in John's timing. And of course, that never worked out. And so, until that day I gave up the control, then things started to work out for a little bit better. And, you can see that light and it makes you see the world differently. So, because in order to give up the control, first you have to lay down your pride, you have to become vulnerable, and you have to do a self-examination. And those are three of the hardest things I think that you have to do. And I think it's especially hard for males because we're supposed to be prideful. We're supposed to be the tough people in the world, and we're grown up that way. But when you lay down your pride and you become vulnerable, the strength you get from that is truly unbelievable. So,
yeah, as a Marine, you would have to have a lot of self-control and authority on others, where you've got that command presence that a lot of people don't ever get. Do you feel like that has helped you in who you are today?
Oh, without a doubt. I mean, because you have command authority, but you also have people that have authority above you too, that you have to answer to, and then you have the troops under you. So it's true teamwork, and it's like a football team, because you have the head coach, and that's your general, and then you have everybody else, and so those kind of fit hand in hand, and that's how I kind of lived for a long time is just accepting the authority above me, but also pushing the envelope because I wanted to do it my way. And so that it was, and I'm not going to say it wasn't fun, but it was trying at times. So
yeah, I'm one of those, tell me what you want the outcome to be. Don't tell me how to do it.
Right.
So as you've let go of this control, have you also let go of the outcome?
Oh, absolutely. It's just after seeing the things that God has done in my life when I gave up control, it's easier to do it again. And again, that's where I talk about with the men, it's, that pride, the arrogance, the ego. Once you lay that down and you let God take over, then you start to see the working that he does in your life. And it's easier to do that the next time. And I'll give this example is I owned a business, COVID hit, and I owned a fitness business. And COVID wasn't really nice to the fitness industry. And so I ended up losing my business. And so I'm going, okay, we got to get out of this lease. We had 2 more years on this lease. So we had to get the landlord to agree to stop the lease because there's no way we could pay it. We had to sell our equipment. We had to pay some remaining debt that we owed. And, I'm just going, how am I going to do this? And I just, every day I just say, hey, it's your will. You take over, let it go. And in 2 months, we sold all our equipment. The landlord let us out of our lease. As we were doing all this, I had an investor that called me out of the blue, and he wasn't even on my radar. I wasn't even thinking about him because he had been such a great friend and an investor for years. And he called me and he said, John, I'm just going to release your debt. You don't owe me anything. And I was just blown away. And it was a $10,000 debt. And I looked at it as, okay, I'm focusing on this stuff. And because I did by letting God take over, he took care of that for me. And, it just makes it easier to go through life right now. And, when I start to have a battle, I just say, it's your will. You take over and I'm not going to worry about it. And whatever the outcome is, it's because you want it that way and I'll accept it. So
it sounds like there's a lot of trust involved in this letting go of control.
Yeah. Well, it's faith too.
Okay.
Yeah.
That works. So faith that the direction that you are supposed to go will be there. The path will be cleared for you and you don't have to. I like to clear my own friggin' path, right?
Yep. So, but yeah, it's more about, I think it's more about faith. Well, and it is trust because you have to, in order to have faith, you have to trust that, the will of God is going to be right for your life. And you have to trust that. So.
Have you seen it make huge changes in the person you are? Or do you feel like you're still basically the same person?
Oh, okay. Go ahead. Finish.
No.
I was going to say, no, there's definitely a change. I mean, it's a different. So I had another podcast host ask me, what was the biggest change since I, gave up control and started to walk in the faith that I have and I see the world differently. I told her I see the world through Christ's eyes. And, so when I look at people, I don't judge them anymore. I look at them for who they are and not, I don't have any preconceived notions when I meet people. And it's just, I have a softer heart, more compassion for others because, everybody has a story. Everybody's got hard times and we just don't know. And, it's getting more involved with people and having a softer heart and just seeing things differently and then hearing things differently. So,
it's the same words. It's the same people that you're interacting. Well, maybe not the exact same people, but the same type of thing. And if you hear it different, what is that difference that you feel? Is it the feeling associated with the words that you feel differently or how you interpret it?
I think it's how I interpret what they say. That's the only thing I can say on that is it's a different interpretation. Because before it was probably, they would speak and I'm like, well, that's not what I want to do. So I'm not going to listen to you. And now it's okay. Let's take a look at this and see, let's listen to this and see what this could possibly be, and even when I was a coach, I used to tell my parents, hey, if you got a problem with what we're doing, don't come to me with you can come to me and address the problem, but have a solution too. Don't just come in and express the problem and beat a drum, have a idea of how we can overcome the problem. And, even though that happened, I would still okay, we're doing it my way. So, and I don't do that anymore. It's listening and taking into consideration other people's views and what they want to do, especially in my job and my leadership. I'm in a leadership role right now, and I have a staff of probably 15 people under me. And, it's listening to what they need and how can I serve them as a leader rather than just leading and going my path and going, this is what you're going to do. Here's what you're going to do. And you're going to follow me. So
it sounds like you changed from the boss to the leader.
Yes.
The leader kind of just shows you the path and helps you through if you need it, or the boss tells you that's the way you have to do this.
Right.
So that's a huge change. Do you have the same employees?
No, I'm at a different position. So my staff is completely different. They know me as this John. They never saw the old John, which is probably a good thing for them. But it's been a delight because, and I look back and some of the regret I have is that I wasn't this way when I was coaching, because not that I didn't do a good job coaching, but I think I would have done a better job coaching had I been like this. But it's the timing, and I wasn't ready for it. And, I went through those things to make me who I am today. So
how old was the team that you were coaching? Were they college students?
I coached college, but I didn't have much. I didn't have a lot of leadership role, but it was mostly high school. Because when I was in high school, I was a head football coach. I was also an athletic director, and so I had then defensive offensive coordinator. So I had leadership roles there. So,
do you feel like their lives would have had a different trajectory if you had shown up different? I was trying to make you feel guilty.
No.
But it's like, how do I learn from what I did to what I do now?
Yeah. And some of them I would say no, because they had a great impact. I had great impact on them. Some of them I would say that, yes, they would have a different outcome because they're probably the ones I was the harder on. And so it's probably a percentage, and I don't know what that percentage is. I mean, I've had some of my former players reach out to me, and I had to ask for forgiveness for one because of the story, and I don't want to get into the nuts and bolts of it, but it was a tough situation, and I didn't realize that I hurt him that bad. And, all I could do at that point was ask for forgiveness. And so, some yes, some no. And I'd like to think that I've had more of a positive impact than a negative impact. But there was a negative impact on some of my situations. So.
Wow. And isn't it like refreshing to be able to admit it instead of hide it? Like when I try to hide who I was, it's that shame. It's that hide. Don't let yourself out. And when you can admit it, you realize that nobody's perfect.
Right.
And everybody can learn and grow and change.
Right.
I'm not the same person I was yesterday or 10 days ago or 5 years ago. And for sure, not 30 years ago.
Absolutely.
It's just like,
absolutely.
Oh my gosh.
Well, I tell people all the time, if 3-4 years ago, if you'd have told me that I would have written a book and, doing podcasts on a weekly basis and preaching the gospel, that I would have laughed at you, because it just wasn't in my wheelhouse. But, it's funny how God works, and, here we are. But yes, it's, that's what when I talked about the self-examination, that's what that part of that is you got to look back on your life, and you got to see, where you made the mistakes. You got to admit those mistakes, and then you have to seek forgiveness. So,
I guess I'm still, and this is just because this is something I haven't learned yet, as giving up the control. So it kind of is scary. So what I'm going to do is take a quick break. And then when we come back, I want you to help me understand how to let go and have that faith.
Okay.
So we'll be right back.
This podcast is sponsored by Lara Jane Coaching. You know you're ready to silence your inner bully voice. Let Lara Jane support you with coaching. To schedule an introduction call, go to larajanelayton.com.
We're back. So, John, how did you go through that process of being in complete control to all of a sudden having faith that somebody else or something else would give you the same freedom, if not greater freedom, that you already had?
Well, the only thing I can say is it says in the Bible in 2 Corinthians that, God is only going to give you what you can handle. But I heard a pastor say that he goes, that's the only Bible verse in the Bible that's not true, because God's going to give you more than what you can handle, because he wants you to fall down on your knees and look up and say, I need your help. And that's where I was in my life. Is basically I was hit rock bottom. And what I was doing, I finally saw that what I was doing and how I was controlling my life wasn't working. And because of the work I had done with my spiritual mentor and going to seminary school and getting a deeper understanding of the word, I knew that if I let God take over, that I would have a better life and it would be more joyful and no matter what took place. And that was the epiphany in that November morning in 2016. And so that's, it's going to be different for every person, I think. I kind of attribute it to being an addict, because having self-control is an addiction. And so you got to hit rock bottom and you got to admit that you need the help, and you got to become vulnerable. And until you can do that, that's, it's going to be tough. So.
Okay, so that's kind of freaking me out. I don't want to hit rock bottom.
Well, everybody's rock bottom is different, but it's just being vulnerable, and accepting, that, hey, some of the things you're controlling might not be the best thing for you. I feared, when I started my walk as a Christian, I feared, okay, if I have to, what if I have to give up this? What about to give up this? But those things that you're giving up, they're probably not the best things in your life anyway. And so once you see that, it's easier to do. So, I don't hang out with some of the friends I used to because of my faith, because they aren't in a faith walk like I am. And so I can't associate with them anymore because it's not healthy for me. So
it's just not a good fit anymore.
Yeah.
So not that they're bad or you're good or
exactly.
It doesn't fit anymore. And we're all on our own path.
Yeah.
That scripture that you mentioned, I had no idea which Corinthians or anything it was from, but I remember knowing that God's never going to give me anything that I cannot handle. And I've always said, I must be really weak because I've had a pretty cushy life.
See, I was just the opposite. I said, I must have big shoulders because God is pounding on me. So, but, it's, and I think anybody, cushy life, tough life, it's all the same. And I think, he's going to search your heart and he's going to show you what's not of him. And he's going to say, this is what you need to let go of. And he's going to pound you a little bit. He's going to test you until you let go. So.
Yeah. How do you, is it a daily thing that, everybody's like, hey, I give myself and I give this, whatever you bring into my life today, I know is for my benefit, or how do you take that faith?
So the first thing I do when I get up in the morning is I hit my knees and I pray, and then I get into the word and I read the word. And that gives me the strength to go to the day. And, the scripture that I read is it used to be planned out. Now it's kind of sporadic. I just kind of open up the Bible and start reading wherever it is because I want God to show me what he wants to reveal to me today. Sometimes things click, sometimes there's nothing. And so it's just a reading. But when I first started, it was a reading plan from my mentor, with a directed purpose. And so to grow your faith. And so if you don't have a prayer and reading plan, that's the toughest thing, because the only way you're going to get to understand the word and to give up that self-control is to understand God's purpose for you and to understand what he wants from you. And the only way you can do that is through prayer and reading. So
do you know what you're supposed to be doing, or does each day you say, let whatever's supposed to be?
Well, I pretty much say whatever your will is. And, I always pray that he places somebody in front of me that I can speak the gospel to, because I think that's part of what I'm supposed to be doing because the book's here. A little story about the book and how it came to be is I started it in 2014 when my counselor said, you need to write a book. I wrote 5 chapters and then I stopped because I really didn't know where the book should go from there. And it sat on the shelf until February of 2021. And in my morning prayer time, I came across Hebrews 10:36, which says, when you're doing the will of God, you must persevere to get what he promised. And then about an hour later, I was reading in A.J. Swoboda's book, his very first book, Messy. He was talking about the will of God. And he said, no one told him if anybody would read his book or buy his book. He just had to write it. And so those two things happened that morning. And I went, okay, I need to finish my book. And that was kind of the sign that I took from that. And so I committed to writing in the book for 2 hours a day. And I finished the book in 4 weeks. And so then I talked to my spiritual mentor, and he recommended that I contact this young lady that lives here in Washington. She's an editor, and she had worked with Scotty in prayer ministry. And so she was the perfect person to edit the book. So we started working together. And then she said, John, I'm a scout for Morgan James Publishing. I think they're going to accept your book if we submit it. September of 2021, I had the book accepted by Morgan James. I had my first copies by March of 2022. It was in the bookstores. It'll be in the bookstores. August 16th will be 1 year in the bookstores. So went into bookstores last year in August. And, that stuff doesn't happen without obedience and hearing the voice of God. And, I'm not saying it was a verbal command, hey, you got to do this, but just those two things that took place told me, you got to finish this book.
You had the faith.
Yeah.
You knew that you were supposed to write the book.
Yep.
Whether it was for you or one other person or for a whole bunch of people, you took that with faith and you let it happen.
Yep.
And the things that needed to happen in your steps happened because of that.
Correct.
Trust that you had in another source other than I have to control this.
Right.
So that's pretty cool.
Well, and that's what I say. When that happens, it makes it easier the next time. I just, I've already started book 2, and book 2 is entitled The Test of God, because God tests us. And so he tests us to deepen our faith, because he wants to know how you're going to react. Are you going to react in selfish ways? Or are you going to react in the world ways? Or are you going to rely on me to get you through this? And so those are the tests that we go through to deepen our faith. So
what was the name of the first one?
The first book is Broken and Redeemed, Finding Freedom from Complete Surrender. And then the second book's entitled The Test of God. So, and there probably won't be a subtitle. It's just going to be The Test of God. So,
right. Okay. Yeah. And when does that one come out?
We're still working on it. Cause I don't write unless I feel like I'm prompted to. And so it's, I've got it outlined. All the chapters are outlined, and I've got 3 chapters written. So it's a work in progress. It probably won't be out. I would say it probably wouldn't hit bookstores until late 24 or 25. So.
Okay. Well, when it does, let us know, and we'll add it to the show notes with the rest of your bio and your first book.
Yeah. So
what do you think is the most important thing you do every day to stay trusting in that faith? It's
my morning prayer and reading. And so if mistakenly not set my alarm clock and I get up late and I don't get that in, my days kind of doesn't flow as good as it normally does. And so, I make sure that I get up and I pray and I read and I listen to some worship music in the morning, and because that gets me through the day. And I start my day at 3:45 in the morning. Because I have to be at work at 5 a.m. And so I get up at 3:45, so I have enough time to do some prayer and reading. And people always ask me, they give me that reaction like you did, ouch. And so, they go, how do you get through the day? And I said, well, I give God that time in the morning, so he gives me the strength to make it through the day. So
I would say lots of caffeine.
Well, that helps too. I do have a couple of cups of coffee. But
I gotta have my coffee in the morning.
It's that, and it's just keeping in touch with my mentor. I think the important thing is you have to have somebody that's farther along in your walk that can help you understand because you're going to have questions. You're going to have, how do I do this? What do I do here? And you got to have. I just talked to my mentor about a couple of things, and we had a great conversation. And so, it's an ongoing process, and you have to have that mentor in order to bounce things off of, because you're always going to have questions. So
I love that follow someone who's further along in the path than you, which is amazing wisdom, because sometimes we think the only people we can learn from are the college professors or these people in these high ranks, but a kindergartner can learn from a first grader. Absolutely. And a first grader can learn from a second grader. Sure, they could probably learn from a college professor also, but it might not be understandable at their level. Right. So if we find somebody that matches us enough, but it's just a little bit ahead. It's easier to follow than these people where you go, I can never be that perfect.
Right. Well, and here's the thing.
It's just too far away.
Well, I look at my mentor and I'm like, I can never be like him because he is an amazing man of God. But I'm thankful that God put him in my life, and it's discipleship, and when I started working with him, we started working together, and he was putting me through his discipleship program, and we were about 2 weeks into it. And he looked at me and he goes, "Who are you discipling now?" And I'm like, "Huh? I'm not ready to disciple somebody." And he said, "Yes, you are, because somebody new to Christ, you could disciple right now." And so, that's Christ said, "Go and make disciples of all nations." And so that's why you need that mentorship. And we're not supposed to go through this alone. We're supposed to have, fellowship with other believers and other Christians to help us get along and or help us move through this crazy mixed up world we live in, because it is crazy and it's mixed up right now.
I love that you do not have to go through this alone. And I know that's a little different words than you said, but for all our listener, how important it is to find somebody that you click with in a way that inspires you to be a better you, whether it's a coach or a religious person or your coworker or whoever. There's somebody. And just because they may be 10 steps ahead of me on the red path and 3 steps behind me on the blue path, that's when you can help each other, because they're helping you and you're helping them. And it's just this nice synergy that we don't all have to, we're never all going to be in the same place at the same time.
Oh, no,
it's impossible.
And the thing is most people who are going through hard times think that they're the only person going through what they're going through, and they're not. There's thousands of people going through the same thing, and don't feel like you're alone. And even mental health counseling, if you're in a situation where you've been a victim of trauma or something, you're not the only one that's been through that. Find somebody who can help you work through all that, overcome the shame and guilt of that.
I think sometimes we don't search out that person that's been there because of the shame and guilt.
Correct.
Because you think you're the only one that's taking that walk of shame. And as long as you hide it, you don't have to be, you just, nobody else knows. But and you don't, a lot of people don't want to be judged when they talk about what they went through too. Yeah.
So, and that's where you've got to find somebody who you can trust ultimately, because in order to really get free of that, you have to become vulnerable and you have to share your experience, and you have to really trust the person. And, you got to find somebody who's not going to judge you, whether it's professional counseling or spiritual counseling, whatever it is, or a close friend. There can't be judgment, and you have to be totally unconditionally honest and vulnerable. And that's the only way you're going to find that path to freedom and to giving up that control. So,
yeah, I like that. I didn't really think about it, but it is nice to have that person you trust. But once you open up and realize somebody still loves you, even though you aren't perfect, it gives you that strength to have less shame when other people hear it too. So once you find that confidant that loves you, even though you did something goofy along the way,
right.
You're easier to tell the next person, hey, I was goofy.
Right.
So I love that.
Right.
We are getting close to the end. And so what I want you to do is think about all the things and really, what is that key piece to being able to give up control? And I know you said faith. I still fear that letting go.
Well, I think for me, the key piece is becoming vulnerable and being able to search yourself and seeing what's holding you back, and, what's the fear of letting go? Because it is a fear, and I had that. I couldn't really put my finger on what the fear was, but it's just the fact that I think for me, it was, if I let go of everything, what's my life going to be like? Am I going to still have fun? Am I going to still have this or that? And yes, you're actually going to have a better life. You're going to have more fun. But you have to search that. You have to become vulnerable and look at yourself, and you have to lay down the pride. To me, those are the two things that hold people back the most, I think, is the pride and the vulnerability.
pride in vulnerability.
Mm-hmm.
So if I allow myself to be more vulnerable and to be okay if somebody doesn't like who I was or am at the time, and have faith that there is purpose in my life and that the things I went through were for the strengthening, and so that I can be more compassionate to the next person, then I got it made.
Yeah, because here's the thing. The Bible says that we go through our hard times to help those who are going through trouble. And so our testimony is going to help someone else go through that. And so, but we have to understand who we are in Christ, and that there's no, and that's where our value is and everything like that. Because we don't want to, we're not going to be judged by the world. And I think it's hard to do that as humans because we want acceptance from the world and from friends. But I would rather have acceptance from Christ than the world. So
I love that. Yes. The people or the person or the thing, whatever you want to call Christ, that's the person. That person that you are, whether it's Muhammad or Buddha or any other religions, that person that you look at as the higher power is the person we should be worried if we're going to embarrass or shame or have them shame us. Right. And every one of those people that I mentioned would never do that to anybody.
Right.
No matter how evil or bad they were, they would still love them. And that is the thing that I strive for, is that unconditional love where I just accept you the way you are on the path you're on. And I don't need to change you to make the world better. I need to change me.
Correct.
I love it. Any last minute words before we close out?
I just be vulnerable and give up your pride. and love your neighbor, because I think that's, our society is so fragmented right now. We're so divided that I think we need to get back to that, and we need to start connecting more with people around us. And I think COVID was a big cause of that. It separated us as a society, and we've lost our way a little bit. And I think that we need to come back to loving each other and not judging each other so much.
Yeah. And I love that, love your neighbor. And I want to expand that to anybody you cross paths with.
Yes. Yeah.
Not just the person that lives next door, but everybody you cross paths with. Right. And even the people you don't, love them for their journey, allow them on their journey, and support them when they need it.
Exactly. Even if you disagree with what they're doing, then you still love them, because it's their choice, and you're going to love them and help them through. So.
Beautiful. Thank you, John.
Yes, thank you.
Totally love this. I'm probably still going to be a control freak in the morning, but I'm working on it. So, we're going to make it. So, thank you, listener. John and I are not medical or mental professionals. We are here as people who have been through life, have seen some things that work for us. And if we can support you on your journey through the crap that happens, we're here for you.
Amen.
So thank you. Have a great day and stay tuned for the next episode.
Are you tired of waking up exhausted? You are not alone. If you're looking to take your life back, let's start with the simple step of adjusting your self-talk. Stay tuned for the next episode with your host, Lara Jane. Remember to follow the show so you don't miss a next simple step that you can use to feel more confident. And please leave an honest review.